Welcome back to Module 8 of the Agile Operations Fundamentals course. In this course, we're going to talk about how we test, validate, and implement the hypothesis and the options we have for continuous improvement. This phase is the last stage of the 4 phases. So we've mobilized, we've understood the problem, we've looked at all the options, and we've identified solutions. And now we're going to build, test, and implement the solutions that we have. So we want to test the solution hypothesis, and we're going to show you how to do that in an agile way. We're going to validate the outcomes of the test, and if successful, we're going to implement these changes using the agile program pattern. We're going to showcase and we're going to celebrate. So if you look at the PDCA model from the lean ways of working, they talk about plan, do, check, act. And the first bit, which is plan, really is the breakdown of mobilize, understand, and explore options. The do, check, and act is really the breakup of build, test, and implement. We want to take the options from the plan stage, we want to test them out, we want to validate the tests, and then we want to implement them, and then we want to start all over again. So very much in line with lean thinking. So now we're going to talk about how we test our solution hypothesis. So the first thing to do is to define the solution for each of the problem areas we're trying to solve and set your desired goals. So it's important to set goals that are SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. The next step is to write acceptance criteria. State how success would look like if that hypothesis were true. And we have to write down the measures of success. Based on this, we would then write test cases of how we're going to test this acceptance criteria to see whether it's there or not. We're going to simulate the solution. Now, this could be in a real-life simulation, or this could even be a dry run. We're going to measure the outcomes and test it against the test cases. So we're actually going to run the test cases on the simulation and see what the results are. We're going to validate it, and then we're going to loop back. So the important thing to remember here is keep it low tech, keep it low fidelity, keep these solution tests simple. We don't want to build big systems in order to prove them. We can test them just using a very simple framework. We do this for each of the process improvements within our solution, and we keep iterating and testing till we're happy. Now, once we're happy, we're then ready to implement and roll it out on a larger scale. The implementation bit is the most critical part of the change, because if you don't take time to implement the change properly, then even the best hypothesis and the best solutions would not be a success, and you would actually think that your solution is not right when actually you haven't implemented it properly. So it may need considerable effort, and if it does need considerable effort, let's say to implement this process change, then the best way to implement it is to implement it like an agile project. So how do we do that? To implement it as an agile project, you would use the Agile program pattern that we talked about in the Agile program fundamentals. So you take the idea, you run a quick discovery workshop. Now this will not be needed because this has already been done as part of your solution testing. And then you break it down into releases and phases, and you break each release down into iterations and do a planning session. So the important step is when you're ready to start implementing is to start an iteration 0 for your first delivery, plan it, run through all the steps of iteration 0, and then in 2-week iterations, implement the solution that you were talking about. Now you implement this using Agile, so you would do your weekly planning sessions, your daily stand-ups, the work, and you would showcase and retrospect at the end. I would recommend you go through the Agile Program Fundamentals course and implement any solution in an Agile way. It's important to remember that standards are nothing but the stoppers that prevent the process from rolling backwards. So once you've identified the process improvements and you do make a change to take it up further, if you don't change the standards, then the ball would roll backwards, and that wouldn't be a good place. You then have to keep going forward, but remember to move the standards from the original position to the new position and change your standards as you make improvements. And this is what will help you to keep getting better all the time. And lastly, don't forget to celebrate and trumpet your success. Get together with the team, talk about it, write case stories, share and learn. And this way you not only spread and learn from the rest of the team, but you would also help build the morale of the team. Now, it is very important to remember, once you have made a large process change, let it settle for a little while, for maybe a couple of weeks. Make sure you're doing the measurements and then think about making the next big process improvement. Because if you don't focus on implementing changes successfully, then you just keep making changes and there's a lot of confusion. You wouldn't know where your bottlenecks and your waste really is. Remember that success is not a straight line. You will have to go through multiple changes. Sometimes change is not an improvement. It could be a step back. But if you keep measuring and if you keep focusing, then you will continuously improve. And lastly, don't demand perfection, but insist on continuous improvement. Thank you very much.